Welcome back from the break. You're still watching This Week, and I'm Samna Sambu. Now, during the week, African leaders gathered in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, for the unveiling of the African School of Governance. The institution aims to redefine leadership and governance across Africa by training a new generation of leaders equipped to tackle the continent's complex challenges. The launch brought together prominent figures, including co-founders President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, who was represented, and former Ethiopian Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn. Now, Arise News was at the event in Kigali, and we now bring to you a one-on-one interview with the president of the African School of Governance, Nigeria's own Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Welcome to this interview, Prof. Moghalu. Talk to us about how much of a renaissance the African School of Governance is, having said it's the awakening of a sleeping giant.
Well, you know, Africa as a continent is a continent of so many possibilities. It's a continent with a huge and growing population. It's a continent with a lot of natural resources. But the continent has not been able to realize its potential and keeps lagging the rest of the world, especially in the area of prosperity. So the ASG is a call for the awakening of the sleeping giant, because the co-founders of this institution, that is to say the president of Rwanda, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, identified the governance deficit as the key to awakening the sleeping giant. And so ASG is established to train the pipeline, the pool that over the next generation will rise to leadership across the continent, and with the capabilities that they will have trained here, with the mindset that they will have, the mindset of purpose-driven leadership, an African worldview and narrative, with the Africa context-specific education that we will give them, in addition to, of course, teaching about the rest of the world and how Africa relates with that. The ASG, therefore, is a foundation for the awakening of the sleeping giant. That's what I meant.
So do we really need the ASG, and what makes it different from other schools of governance and leadership globally?
I am a graduate. I hold a PhD from the London School of Economics. I hold a master's degree from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. I am an alumnus of Harvard Kennedy School and Harvard Business School executive education programs. I did all of these because there was a gap. If ASG had existed at the time I was a student, you know, almost 30 years ago, I would have gone to ASG. If ASG existed and was offering what we intend to offer. So ASG is going to be an important game changer. People will always have a choice about where to go to school. There's nobody saying that all Africans must go to school in Africa. But the point is that we need to provide an Africa-centric interpretation of the world that has been missing. And because of that, you have a lot of African leaders and policymakers who have technical knowledge, who have skills, but they don't have an African worldview. They don't believe that Africa can have its own agency. They are always leaning on external props, the IMF, the World Bank, Washington, London, Paris. They always feel they need to be validated by other civilizations and other countries. The training we will give people in ASG will change this mindset and give Africans confidence that they themselves are God's children too, entitled to a place in the sun on their own terms. And so other continents will seek validation from Africa. because we are skilled, knowledgeable, the right way of thinking, giving the right example, most importantly, transforming our own reality. What matters for Africa is that our countries should be well governed. It's not, and that is about certain fundamentals. It's about values. It's about the mindset before you even come to the matter of knowledge and skills.
So why should Africans actually believe in the ASG? And then talk to us about the curriculum of learning and, of course, the language of learning too.
Well, certainly. I mean, a lot of efforts have been going on in the African continent, and there has been some progress. And I think the Agenda 63 of the AU is certainly a great vision, the Africa we want. Parallel to that, the ASG will be training the manpower with the mindset and the skills and the knowledge base that will help to create that Africa that we want. So yes, we are into the how these things will happen. Because for many decades, Africa has not been short of visions. They've not been short of resolutions. They've not been short of diplomatic conferences at the African Union and other international organizations. The question is, what's the reality on the ground today in our continent? That's what ASG wants to address, how to change that reality on the ground. That will come from our curriculum. Because one of the reasons why Africans don't believe in themselves is because they have allowed global history to be rewritten against them. And so the Africans lack a sense of identity relative to the rest of the world. And that's why I was telling you that many Africans always look to the West or Asia for external validation. At ASG, we will train people in African history. And people will see, as His Excellency Haile Mariam said yesterday, that Africa was actually the beginning of human civilization. And so when people know these facts, which are not taught, they will not teach you that at Harvard, they will not teach you that at the London School of Economics, they will not teach you that at Sorbonne, So it is our responsibility to teach Africans and non-Africans our history, the history of our continent, and how we have contributed globally to civilization. This sort of platform helps, but I want to be very clear that ASG is not a school of politics. It is a school of leadership and governance across sectors, which include the public sector, can include the political space, it includes the private sector, and it includes the social sector. The language of instruction in the ASG will be English for now. Eventually, we expect to get to a place where other languages can be incorporated, whether it's French, whether it's Arabic, whether it's Swahili, but there's no language that is spoken throughout the entire African continent other than the colonial languages or Arab. Even Arabic is spoken only mostly in North Africa. So this is a reality that is unfortunate, but we have to still train people in the English language in such a manner that they can then translate the principles that we have trained them into local languages in their own countries.
Talk to us about the faculty of leaders that will be training people here, because most Africans will be coming here to Kigali to receive training. And then, of course, the focus will be on the quality of leaders in terms of people that will be in the faculty that will be teaching them.
This is an institution founded by, heads of state. There is no other institution like that in Africa, no other school of governance in that mold. Some schools of governance are named after, but this one is founded by a sitting African president and another former African head of government. So obviously they have a network of their colleagues, some of whom are like-minded. And so, we expect, as I said, at the lunch yesterday, that we should have personalities like Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president of Kenya, personalities like Ian Khama, the former president of Botswana, personalities like Olusegun Obasanjo, former president of Nigeria, personalities like Goodluck Jonathan, former president of Nigeria, Haile Mariam Desalegn himself, former prime minister of Ethiopia. President Kagame is a sitting president. So obviously he's got a lot of work on his hands. But, we would be happy to invite him to deliver some special lectures from time to time. And then the more standard faculty that will be full-time, we are currently recruiting. We have placed an announcement in The Economist and various other publications, Jeune Afrique, announcing professorial positions for subjects like leadership and ethics, subjects like international relations, subjects like public policy, subjects like economics for public policy, subjects like African history. So these are all things that are going to be part of our curriculum. And we are looking for scholars and practitioners who can teach our students from a new perspective. Everything we're going to be doing at ASG, whether it's economics, whether it is public policy, whether it's international relations, we're going to be looking at it from the African narrative, the African context, and the African view of the world that prioritizes Africa's interest first and seeks to give agency to African leaders to believe in ourselves first, that we can do it, then go ahead and do it and show an example to the world. That's how you command respect. I want to give you Rwanda as an example. Why is everybody visiting here today? It's because the leader in charge is delivering. He has delivered a significant amount of transformation. It's not El Dorado. It's still, not a wealthy country. But if you look at where they're coming from, 30 years ago, after the genocide, and you look at where it is today, you will then see that it is very possible to transform countries.
And isn't it a big challenge inviting former African leaders to come around and share their ideas? Because, the general perception among Africans is that majority of their leaders are failures. It's only a new generation of leaders that are being built. So what difference will they make?
You've touched on a very important point. The reason we're inviting some of these leaders to speak and teach here is not because they were perfect. If they were perfect, Africa and their countries would have been better. But you see, it is to share their successes and to share their failures and the lessons from both. That's the point. So it will be a chance for African students to interrogate former leaders. If you like them or you don't like them, it's your opportunity to say, if you were disappointed, you can say, sir, Your Excellency, I was disappointed by this and that aspect of your time in governance. Can you explain? Do you see what I'm saying? And how do we, make sure that future leaders do not make these kinds of mistakes? And there will be a lot of words of wisdom from those lessons, in my own view. So the reason leaders speak at schools and institutions is precisely for this purpose. Because very few people have been leaders at the level of being, president of a country, and that's a very unique positioning. Whether the person has been a success or a failure, or both, depending on the context, it does not matter. There is something from that experience that is unique and worth sharing. Meanwhile, there will be other people who are not presidents, who will also be on the faculty, who will come here to speak. Very important personages. They chose not to go into politics. Some of them may be philanthropists. Some of them may be business CEOs. Some of them may be academics. Some of them may be civil servants. So there are many aspects of governance. People tend to focus a lot on politics and political leaders. And they're important because, like you say, politics is a driving force. But there are other aspects. For example, one of the things we want to do in the African School of Governance is to create a cohort of leaders that can build institutions that are strong. If you look at the United States today, its politics is a challenge for the citizens themselves. The citizens have made a decision and chosen whom they want to be their president. But it's a far more divided society in America today than it used to be. One of the reasons it is still the world's superpower is because its institutions are strong. Regardless of who is the president, the US military will be the US military. Regardless of who is the president, the US Supreme Court will be the US Supreme Court. And they will do their work. So this is, you saw something that the US Supreme Court struck down an attempt to prevent the sentencing for the incoming president. That's to tell you that institutions still exist and they're strong. So this is one of the things we want for Africa. We have never seen heads of state or heads of government in Africa being held accountable. There was an attempt to impeach the president of South Korea. The prime minister of Israel is on trial for charges of corruption, and so many others. In Africa, we must come to a place where the leader is not bigger than the led or bigger than the system he presides over. This is a very important lesson we must learn in Africa. We're just not there yet.
Aren't you being overambitious inviting some of these former African leaders and then who have set up this institution? Because the general thinking is that African leaders, whether past or present, have a monarchical complex. Once they get into government, they don't want to follow the rules. They just think that they're high and above every other person.
The most important priority is to make sure, whether they have the monarchical complex or not, to make sure that they are competent and they deliver the results. That's our first priority. Other things can come 50 years later or 100 years later. It may be possible to see an African president being indicted on charges of corruption. Yes, but right now, what we want is the ability to govern. But accountability is a very important part of governance. That's why we cannot run away from this conversation. One of the reasons we are not able to make that quantum leap in development is because our leaders are so monarchical that they cannot be held to account. And so you find a lot of corruption, no accountability. In China, it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter how high you are. The system is still the system. And if you breach it, so until Africa confronts this fundamental issue, we will still be limited.
And are you working to rebuild the spirit of Pan-Africanism across the continent, returning the spirit of the Azikiwes, the Nkrumahs, the Mandelas of this world?
Not just a political philosophy of Pan-Africanism, because the truth of the matter is that however Pan-Africanist you are countries, and they are governed by national governments. So what we can do is to make sure that through the regional trading system, our countries become a lot more integrated. And to me, that's Pan-Africanism in practice. Right now, the Afrexim Bank has established the Pan-African Payments Settlement System, PAPS. That's a very practical step so that you can pay for goods you're buying from Ghana or Cote d'Ivoire in Naira without having to go through dollars and other third currencies. So these are the practical challenges that we have to overcome because of our colonial legacy.
Where are you going to ensure that you get regular funding for the African School of Governance? Because starting the project, it's not the issue, but of course, having a sustainable source of income. Are you considering the issues of endowment like it's usually done in other schools like this?
Absolutely. This is a very important issue. Of course, you know that the initial funding support comes from our partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. So they have provided initial funding to set up the School of Governance. And right now we're developing resource mobilization plans to build on that and to raise further funds for the school over the next few years and to establish an ASG endowment that the yield from the investment will be able to run the school, well into the future. So this is a critical element of sustainability for such an initiative as this. We're well aware of this, and we are making the necessary plans in consultation with our co-founders, who will in fact be leading the effort to make sure that their colleagues, African countries, African private sector, and other sources, foundations around the world. And of course, I, as president of the university, will be also part and participating in that effort. So yes, very important point, and we have it in hand. In fact, our press conference, if I might reveal to you, the press conference that was interrupted yesterday was interrupted by a meeting I had to have with the governing council of the African School of Governance Foundation. And, they needed a briefing on how far we've come, what is my plan, what's my roadmap as president for the success of the ASG, and what are our strategies for funding the ASG. So that was a very important discussion, and that's one of the reasons I had to leave the press conference abruptly. My apologies.
And the most interesting question, why is Kigali the home of the African School of Governance?
Kigali was made the home of the ASG for many reasons. One, I feel that there was consensus that it is an example of possibilities for transformation in Africa. Two, practically, of course, one of the co-founders is the president of Rwanda. But I think more persuasive is the record on the ground in terms of governance, because Rwanda is a country that takes governance very seriously. In this country, you have a Rwanda Governance Board that assesses the governance performance of every aspect of government every year. You also have top-down governance assessment. The president of Rwanda goes into the villages from time to time to talk to villagers, and they will tell him directly whether the mayor, the local government mayor, is performing or not. So there are ways in this country of making sure that there is accountability for government performance or non-performance. So therefore, it's not surprising that Kigali was chosen as the headquarters for the African School of Governance. Another practical reason is that Kigali is a very livable and pleasant city. As you can see, there's a lot of tourism, a lot of people visiting this country increasingly. The infrastructure is improving, and so it's a very attractive place.
Why should people send their children down here to come and study in Kigali? How safe is the country? And of course, if I am coming here to come and study, what's the guarantee that, everything will be fine with me and this will be a world-class institution?
This country is one of the safest countries in the world. Women walk around that can walk in the night without being, you can take a walk in the evening, so it's a very clean country. It's very safe. So the environment all around is quite conducive, actually, for people to live and study. And that's why you have a very significant international student population here. And you have many foreign universities beating down the door to come and establish campuses in Rwanda. You have the Carnegie Mellon, Africa, here. You have so many foreign universities are based here. And it's precisely for this reason, because it's a conducive environment for young people to study.
And as we try to round off this conversation, I'm very much interested in knowing where you foresee the African School of Governance in the next 10 years. That's in 2035.
In 10 years, like you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. But in 10 years, that's enough time to begin to see the impact of the African School of Governance. We expect to have graduated several hundred, perhaps a few thousands of graduates equipped with this type of education and knowledge and skills. We hope and expect and plan. We are going to have a program further down the line of placement for ASG graduates. One is that the people we're looking for here are people who are already in careers as young mid-career professionals. So in terms of where they will be anchored when they leave here, it's not going to be such a problem. But we will even have a more proactive program to help ensure that they begin to be placed in positions across Africa where they can make an impact. And so in 10 years, I expect to begin to see, better governance in various institutions in the continent as a result of their leaders having come out of ASG. In about 25 years, or 30 years, a generation, we expect to have quite a large cohort that's able to do the same thing. So over a generation, we hope that there will be a transformation, because this is not just an academic institution. This is a movement for governance transformation in Africa.
Just before I let you go, Prof, how proud are you as a Nigerian being entrusted to run this institution by top African leaders? How proud are you as a Nigerian citizen trying to make a transformative change globally, beginning with Africa?
I'm a proud Nigerian. I'm proud of my country, regardless of the challenges we all know it faces at present. And I believe that each of us can be personal examples of what Nigeria can be. And so as a Nigerian in this role and other roles I have played around the world, I have always been a Nigerian who pursues excellence. And so I see myself as an effective ambassador of Nigeria, based on my performance, based on the character that I show, and based on my leadership of institutions around the world, including the ASG. Okay. Yeah.
We must thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, that's the much we can take on this edition of This Week. Thanks to our production team here in Abuja, Lagos, and London. Do join us same time next week for another exciting edition. I'm Sumner Sambo.